matter where he goes, mushrooms know where he'll be. He can't even lift his feet from the grass. Those mushrooms are releasing a thick goo. His entire body is covered in it. As Boo approaches, she steps in the goo. She pulls her foot out, stretching some of the material, but it doesn't trap her, staying stuck to the ground. There are 40,000 types of mushrooms here, and none should be underestimated. Finally, she points her weapon at the hostile human. At that distance, there's nothing he can do. He looks at her, paralyzed with fear. Bo says there's only one type of human, the bad kind. Now she wants to know who he called trash earlier. With a single shot, his head is now inside out. Watching it all without blinking is the small mushroom. Mushrooms are indeed very strong. He wonders if he'll be as strong as them if he evolves. But his eyes are focused on the king. Even though these are strong, they are merely subordinates. The king must possess immense power. In the distance, a small shadow appears near the king. He asks the piglet if it's his imagination or if there's really something there. A mysterious and eerie shadow looms over the battlefield. The warrior advances toward the Mushroom King. The creature is furious with everything that has happened. He didn't like being belittled by a monster. It's unpleasant. He moves his neck from side to stretch. His muscles begin to pump up absurdly. The juice is taking effect. It's his heart pumping the venom through his veins. His arms tremble as they receive all that juice. His muscle mass is growing to a point that would make USADA lose their mind. The strength is so intense that it's almost causing his teeth to crack. A great power is building up. This is the battle spirit of the war general. A massive aura emanates from him, but the Mushroom King remains still. After all this display, only smoke lingers in the air. His muscles are so hot that they emit smoke. On his face is only a sinister grin typical of Trembo rage. His size is imposing and he feels much better this way. The two creatures stare at each other aggressively. He doesn't understand why the king didn't attack him while he was transforming. Maybe he learned chivalry from the humans, but he doesn't care as he won't hold back. All that's on the king's face is pure hatred. In the blink of an eye, they vanish. They clash and strike each other multiple times, much like that famous show where the protagonist constantly screams and changes hair color. The king's sword is maneuvered for a thrust. Mysteriously, his blade curved mid-attack, and it struck the sword of the muscle-bound warrior. However, he merely parried the blade as if it were nothing. This simple movement felt like it launched an attack. The force went straight toward the diamond mushroom. It wasn't cut, but the impact pushed it back. Even so, it only took a modest 1 point of damage. Expecting something like this, the warrior was impressed by its massive defense. He launched another attack, aiming to cut the king, but the creature defended against the strike with his saber. The force of the clash caused the weapon to bend like an elastic band. With a flick of his hand, the king released the elastic energy, deflecting the human's sword. He used the energy to redirect his sword back at the creature. A massive shock occurred between them. The ground bore the marks of the dissipated energy. Consumed by aggression, he demands that the king show him everything he's capable of. The sound of clashing blades fills the area. Some of the slashes extend beyond the battlefield. One of them heads toward the small mushroom and the piglet. For a brief moment, he felt his flesh being cut, but he reacted quickly, pushing the piglet and moving out of the way. They rolled across the ground after that. Just watching the fight was dangerous enough. He had almost died once again. An intense discomfort immediately surged in his head, but it soon passed, leaving him puzzled. The system screen appeared, indicating an urgent warning. An emergency mission had been triggered. If the Mushroom King only had this to show, the human was definitely unimpressed. Judging by the king's expression, he wasn't either. The attacks continued to collide non-stop. Elsewhere, the mage did his best to defend against the girl's creature. He didn't know what kind of beast it was, but he wouldn't let it get close to the king. The shield he created held up bravely against the impact. Now 2 of the creature's arms emerged from the girl's bag. She liked collecting mushrooms because they were cute, but she had no interest in the old one, as she disliked old things. The creature's claws advanced dangerously. The mage did everything he could, creating multiple shields to defend against the onslaught. At the tip of his staff, he began to concentrate something. He launched a wall of poison, which was blocked by the creature. Its skin was immune to magic. The girl remarked once again that those tricks were useless. All his magic was futile, and he hated the feeling of being outmatched. The girl wondered why the shooter and the ninja were taking so long, even with the priestess's help. She no longer wanted to waste time and instructed her creature to emerge. As a condition, it requested a dragon bone. This irritated her, as she knew it was prying into her belongings. While they argued, the warrior was panting heavily. Even at full capacity, he still hadn't dealt any damage to the king. With the blessings, his power had increased 7-fold, and according to the mission data, the Mushroom King was supposed to be around level 60. In response, the king raised his hand, inviting him to attack again. This infuriated the human completely. He didn't like being provoked by a monster like that, so he used 100% of his battle spirit. Such was his strength that when he jumped, he shattered the ground beneath his feet. Now in the air, he prepared for a powerful attack. The massive, muscular figure with no fear of needles advanced. Both hands gripped the sword's hilt firmly. His blade was raised above his head. On his face, there was only an expression of rage and lack of control. Finally, he unleashed his strongest attack so far. The king made his saber spin multiple times. The rotation speed increased gradually. The clash between them occurred, with the tip of the saber touching the sword. This deflected the attack. Using all his strength, he declared that any trick used against him was useless. But he finally realized something was wrong. The energy accumulated in the spinning saber was released, launching the human far away. He crashed into the diamond mushroom. The impact left him writhing in pain. The mountain of muscles leaned against the diamond wall. He had no idea how it happened. It was impossible that a level 60 monster could do all this. Now the Mushroom King was the one advancing for the attack. The king advances aggressively, and the warrior knows he cannot fall here. He uses his sword to defend himself. A large spray of blood is released. This unexpected scene leaves the small mushroom and the piglet surprised. The same expression appears on the tamer's face. The diamond mushroom has to look over his glasses to see what happened. The human's expression is one of total exhaustion, and the Mushroom King remains unimpressed. The sword was pierced by the saber, and the human lost an arm in the process. He coughs up blood from the wound. Falling to the ground with no strength left, he leans on his sword. Weakened and feeling the side effects of the trembo, his body begins to shrink, until he returns to his natural size. All that remains at the tip of the saber is a bit of blood. The king has defeated his adversary without even getting injured. Frustrated by his defeat, the warrior asks the king to at least end his suffering, but the creature remains still, doing nothing. He doesn't understand this behavior and starts to think that the king was just toying with him from the beginning. With no strength left, he collapses to the ground. The warrior's defeat changes the course of events. The tamer finally agrees to give her creature the dragon bone. Upon hearing this, even the creature is surprised. Grateful for her promise, it thanks its master. Part of its snout begins to emerge from the bag. The mage knows he must contain this at all costs. At the tip of his staff, he begins to concentrate a massive poison ball. It grows larger and larger, and he knows it's useless against that monster. Still, he makes it grow even more, because now his target is the girl. She looks at the attack coming her way. A huge explosion occurs when the ball hits the target. It's the creature's arm that was hit. The mage watches, pondering what he can do. The tamer tells the creature it better resolve this situation because it will get a dragon bone. Not fully out of the bag, it tells its master to stay calm. Gently, it places the girl on the ground. Meanwhile, the mage stands there, observing everything. His expression is pensive, knowing the creature is immune to magic. With his staff, he conjures a protective shield. After that, he begins the standard mushroom attack, a charge. The massive creature slowly turns to face him. A powerful blow lands on the mage. His face is smashed from the sudden impact. Hitting the ground, a large crater forms from the impact. The beast bows before its master, saying that from this point on, it will handle things. In the blink of an eye, it vanishes. The massive figure is already behind the king. It prepares to strike with one of its paws. Facing the imminent danger, the king turns to face it. He maneuvers his saber to defend himself. But the beast's strength is immense, and the king is pushed against the ground. Continuing to exert pressure, it demands that the king apologize. Suddenly, its attack intensifies, driving the king into the ground below. Where the king once stood, there is now a massive crater. The cracks expand even further as the creature keeps pushing. Finally, it removes its paw from the spot and begins to howl as if it had won the battle. Far away, the small mushroom watches, frightened, while the piglet thinks about eating apples and the system screen seems frozen. All that remains is the destruction caused by the fight, a barrage of punches unleashed by the monstrosity. It relentlessly pummels the ground beneath it. Then Bo and the samurai appear to aid the king. Even though they approach from behind, the beast manages to defend itself. Just two of its fingers are enough to stop the sword. With its other hand, it catches Bo's bullets. It demands to know where these two pests came from. The samurai states that they are now its opponents. Bo knows that this creature killed the fourth great mushroom general, Locke. Behind the girl, the priestess appears, using teleportation magic. With her are the bodies of the two who had fallen in battle. She says she will assist the tamer in this fight, but the tamer declines, saying her beast can handle them. The creature mentions it has killed many weak beings and doesn't usually remember their names. The samurai pulls his sword from the wolf's grasp while Bo fires a few more shots. But the beast is incredibly fast and vanishes, causing the attacks aimed at it to hit the ground instead. This leaves the samurai on edge. The same can be said for Bo. Before she even sees the creature, she is struck. This makes the samurai extremely worried. Behind the samurai, the wolf asks where he's looking. Immediately, it prepares to strike the mushroom, but the samurai already has his swords positioned. Before it can land the hit, he executes his attack. The slash moves through the air toward the wolf. A great impact follows. It's enough to push the creature back. It leaves a small cut on its hand, which surprises it. The three mushroom generals gather for the battle. Behind the samurai, the mage uses one of his spells. It's a magic detection spell extending throughout the area. The analysis spreads quickly, reaching the creature. Once it makes contact, he shares his senses with his companions. Knowledge is transmitted through the magic. Bo receives the information, and so does the samurai. Seeing their coordination, the beast smiles. Within a 50-meter radius, it can sense the beast's movements and relay them to his companions. Smirking at this, the wolf begins to move. Its silhouette starts to fade. Soon, there is nothing left where it once stood. Even with the magic, the three realize that it simply vanished. This is incomprehensible to the mushroom mage. The creature is moving rapidly, outside the ranger's magic. By doing so, it gains even more speed. Suddenly, it executes one of its attacks, hitting its target. Bo and the samurai now stand back to back. He knows he needs help to win. Anxiety fills her expression. They are now surrounded by a powerful creature that moves rapidly. Before them, its claws start closing in. Bo raises her dual pistols to defend herself. Reacting quickly, she fires a series of shots at the wolf. On the other side, the samurai does the same, using his swords. The small mushroom realizes they are at a disadvantage and wonders just how strong this wolf must be. Once again, the system screen appears, alerting him of the emergency mission. But he wants to keep watching the fight, and the screen is blocking his view. An epic mission. He has encountered one of Golem's servants and must make it disappear. The reward includes a resurrection coin, a lottery ticket, and 200,000 experience points. These rewards are definitely excessive. Moreover, it doesn't seem like something he can complete right now. Using his hand, he pushes the system screen away. With a mission like that, he must be imagining things. All he wants is for his vision to be unobstructed because he has a show to watch. The samurai finally understands what's happening. What the wolf did was use its incredible skills to enter and exit the magical field. Bo knows that the wolf isn't even taking them seriously yet. Trembling, she knows that when that happens, they won't be able to keep up. Grinning, the wolf asks if they understand the power gap. If they wish to stop him, they are painfully far from that outcome. Before they realize it, the samurai is struck. Almost simultaneously, the same happens to Bo. The force is so great that they are thrown far away. In the end, pawns will always be pawns. But he was once a king who was known as Lycan, ruler of the polar wastelands. A werewolf king of level 92. They were thrown far away, coincidentally, near the mysterious figure. Both are badly injured, and Bo suggests that the samurai flee, but he won't leave her alone. The figure remains there beside them, and the small mushroom and the piglet observe everything. It seems they cannot see that shadow and can't tell if it is a human or a monster. Maybe it is the follower of Golem that the system warned him about. Looking at it, he used his evaluation skill. The mysterious creature started to be assessed. However, the system cannot do it. Whenever this went wrong, the system would say his level was too low. This time it simply returned an error. The creature seemed to sense something and looked in the direction of the mushroom. Noticing this, he felt frightened. Then the shadow vanished from where it was. To the mushroom's complete despair, it was now in front of him. The shadow stared at him intently, but he was paralyzed with fear. Faced with the potential danger, he began to sweat cold. In just an instant, it appeared before him. Looking to the side, he noticed the piglet didn't react as if she wasn't seeing it. Part of the shadow's cloak began to change shape. It had transformed into a large black blade. The mushroom realized his life was at risk. It approached his face. If he moved, he would die, but if he stayed still, he would also die. Faced with this, he didn't know what to do. As a last resort, he made a characteristic sound of mushrooms, repeating it several times and waving his small arms. Immediately, the shadow was confused. The mushroom now rolled on the ground, completely clumsy. The piglet that watched the combat was now distracted. She looked at her friend, who was acting like a normal mushroom, to avoid raising suspicion. Seeing that, she began to grunt playfully. Then she went over to him to play as well. She arrived all excited, blocking the mushroom's path. Her playing with him made the act even more convincing, because if he kept rolling alone, it could be too suspicious. She noticed the mushroom was mumbling something. He told her to push him towards the forest and away from the cliff. Looking at her, he asked if she understood. With her grunts, she said yes. But she started pushing in the opposite direction. Then she did it more and more vigorously. To the mushroom's complete despair, who couldn't even show his emotions. The shadow was still standing there, and the mushroom was now sweating cold. Trembling and terrified, he made mushroom sounds, and the piglet came up to him, licking him. But he remained terrified of the situation. The two continued interacting while the shadow watched them. After observing them for a few moments, they decided it was better to ignore them both, floating and return to where the battle was happening. But there was a peculiar object in one of its hands. It was a bell, and began to ring. Something was happening at the bottom of the hole made by the wolf. From within it, a faint smoke started to rise. A pair of eyes began to glow intensely. Along with that, the sky began to darken as if announcing storm. Meanwhile, the wolf continued its massacre. The generals could no longer do much to resist. They were being beaten with no chance to react. After many blows, they were already badly wounded and tired. But the samurai realized his suffering wasn't over yet. A relentless barrage of blows approached them. Putting his swords in position, he prepared himself. Courageously, he jumped toward the attack, but the pressure was too much for him to do anything. Ahead, it seemed like the wolf was approaching slowly, but that's not what the samurai's intuition said, because the wolf was launching strikes that his eyes couldn't keep up with. Its speed and strength were far beyond the samurai's capabilities. The wolf only smiled at the weakness of its victims. Bo tore off another piece of her cloak and shot it toward the wolf. The fungal net advanced, ready to trap it. All it did was take a deep breath, blowing towards the approaching net. That was more than enough to destroy it. On the ground, different mushrooms began to grow, but one emitting light pressed the button on its head. Several flashes